Last time we were able to set up our form in our registration mini series, so I'm going to check that because it's done. Next, we are going to add async validation to username. So we want to be able to, when a user comes here, we want to be able to validate their usernames before they even submit the form. So the way we are going to do that is going back to our code. Of course, now we have the form set up. So we are going to need to set up an endpoint to be able to check if the user is already in the database and tell us if he's not. Let's move to our views in our authentication app. So in our views.py, right here, we only have the registration view. I see the registration view basically is the one that renders the page. Now we are going to set up another view that's going to handle the username validation. So this one is going to be working a bit differently. The way it's going to work is, you see here, when a user types in something, we don't send an HTML page like we are doing normally here. So what we do is send back data in form of JSON. So JSON basically allows us to communicate between the client here, which is our front end, and then the server, which is our Python views and the database, without having to reload the page. So we are going to be able to pick out data and then send it to a view, to a URL, then a view that of course talks to a model and returns us what's going on. To work with JSON data, we are going to import JSON from Python. So import JSON there. Now we want to be able to accept requests. So the request we are going to accept, since a user is going to be sending us stuff, we are going to expect a post request. So I'm going to change this view to be username validation view. Okay, and I'm going to change this one to small n, just so it makes more conventional sense to Python. This now will take a post request. So when you get the post request, you want to get the username that the user has entered already. So to get the username, I'm going to first set up a variable called data that will help us to get all the data sent from the user. So JSON, we use this function called load. So you see what it does is it gets like data over a network and then it turns into a varied JSON, a varied Python dictionary that Python can easily work with. So the data comes in a request.body. Okay, so once you have that, now we can pick the username from data. So data will contain everything sent from a user. Now we want to pick the username from the data. So we can say username equals data, then username. Because now loads turns into a varied Python dictionary and we can easily access the username from here. So once we have that, now we can check. First of all, we want to check if it only contains alphanumeric characters. So you do a simple if statement. So we are going to turn the username into a string just so we can easily work with it. So username, most likely it's going to be a string most likely, but this doesn't hurt. So username, then we call a function called isAlnum. This is built into Python. So now this will tell us that it's alphanumeric. So if we want the opposite, we can say if not. Then here we need to send back JSON to the user. So the way we send back JSON, so of course we need to return from the view, and then we are going to import some utilities from HTTP. So from Django.http import JSON response. Okay. So now we are sending a JSON response and not an HTML response. Okay. So return JSON response. So this can take in like a dictionary. So we want to say error. I want to make it actually more descriptive by saying username error. And then I want to say username should not contain, okay, should only contain alphanumeric characters. Okay. So like that, numeric, alphanumeric characters. Okay. So let's test this one out actually. So the way we can test it out is we need to add it to the view, to the URLs, just so our app can know about it. So in the URLs, create another path. So path, this one is going to be, I'm going to call it validate username, and then I'll bring in the view. Of course we need to import it, and we do as view. Then we need to give it a name. So name equals validate username. Okay, so once we have this, if we take a look at the view, basically what it does is takes a post request, then validates if it's if the name is not alphanumeric. So if it is, of course, we also want to send back a response. So return JSON response. Then now we want to send maybe username valid true. So username underscore valid. This is going to be true. So this now on the front end, we can imagine that, okay, if it's true, then we allow a user. If not, then that means we are going to have an error up here. Okay, so now to test it out, of course, you see we can't render it over the page because this is a post request. So we need to make an API call here. So for now, I'm going to use a tool called Postman. So if I pull up here, I have Postman open here. So now we are going to, now we know that our server is running on our local host, port 8000, and then it's in the app, it's in the authentication app, which we namespaced by authentication. If you look at our urls.py here, which is, so it's namespaced here, and it's slash what? If we look at the slash, it's going to be slash validate username. So we're going to need to make an API call to that one. So let me copy this. Okay, so post. Then of course we are posting to, this is validate username. Okay, so in here we need to send in the name. So you can select body, row, then JSON, then add a username. Then now you can add the username. So let's say the user is trying to type like ABC. Okay, so if they send a request, okay. Looks like I need to pull up this. My responses, where are you? Okay, so the response is here. Okay, let me bring it up. Just so we can see clearly. Okay, so when you make a request, you can see that it tells us 403 forbidden, meaning the user has no permission to access this. So the reason why it's telling us that it's forbidden is because Django treats all post requests the same regardless of where they are coming from. So it expects all post requests to have specific, a specific token to prevent from cross-site scripting. So what we are going to do here, there's a decorator we are going to use. So this is the one. So what you need to do is from Django, use decorators CSRF, import here CSRF exempt. So this one here, we can always wrap it to all the views that we want Django not to check for cross-site scripting, because we are at least sure that with this view, we are basically just checking usernames, and we can just use that. So just import it from here and then configure it with your route like this. Okay, so once you have that, now and we make another API call, you can see, okay, we have a type error, validate usernames. Okay, so meaning now the error is gone, but we have another one, which I think we can check. So if we come to the view, we basically need to do some debugging here. So we're doing data, JSON.load, data, username, if not strnum. Okay, so I think here we are going to, let me see. So it says, in order to allow non-dict object to be serialized, set safe parameter to false. Okay, so it's requiring us to non-dict objects. Okay, non-dict objects. This should be a dict. Username. Okay, so this should be a dict. So we set it up differently. So it should be a full colon and not a comma. So set a full colon there, then save. The server will restart. Now when you make another call, you can see that we get username valid true. But let's imagine a user is trying to put like these kinds of characters. You can see we get an error with username should only contain numeric characters. Okay, but there's a problem here. So the server right now is sending a 200 response, and that's not appropriate. For us to add an appropriate status here, we are going to come to our Django response. our JSON response and add another key called status. So status equals, now we can add a status code. So since this is like a bad request, you can add 400. So now if a user makes a request, you can see now we send them an appropriate message. Okay, so this is good. Now let's let's repeat it for checking if the username is already taken. So I'm going to copy this and then of course I'll paste it here. Okay, so here we want to check if the user already exists in the database. Okay, so here for us to check if the username exists, we need to check against a database model. So in this series, we're going to be working mainly with the built-in user model. So let's import it here. So from Django.contrib.auth.models import user. Okay, so once you import it, now you can use it to like query. You can query it. So now we want to say, so basically we want to say if user, now we can query the model by using objects.filter. So we want to filter by username, so pass in username equals the username we have. Okay, then we want to do dot exists. Okay, so doing dot exists will return a true or a false depending on what this query returns. So if this returns true, then we want to tell the user that the username is already in use. Sorry, username in use, choose another one. Okay, so once we have that one, now we are going to need to at least implement it in our front end in here. Okay, so before we go, this is supposed to, the appropriate can be like 409, but it really doesn't matter so much. So 409 means that this resource is conflicting with the one that's already available. So once you have that, then we need to implement it like we normally would in the front end. So now going back to the front end, if we go to our registration template, we need to link to a JavaScript file. So the way we link to a JavaScript file is we need to first load in our static assets. So here, after we extend the template, we can load static. So you can do load static like that. So once you finish loading static, now you can link to the like JavaScript files. Okay, so here we set up JavaScript in a folder called, in the main application folder, and then which is here, and then we have static and then JS. So in here we can create a file called register.js. Okay, so let's put like console.log just so we can test out that it's working. So register working. Oh, we don't need this one here. Okay, so here we need to link to it, and the way we link to it is by using the script tag. So write script, and then you need to define a source. So a source is going to be relative from our assets. So we use assets to load them in. Oh, sorry. So in here, put these tags. Then you write static. Then now you need to put the path to your JS file. It's going to be in JS register.js. Okay. So once you save that, once you have that, you can save it. And now if we come back to our application and load, if we pull up our JavaScript console on the right, you can see that we have register working, which is good, which is what we want. Okay, so now we need to detect when a user starts typing here. Okay, so to detect when a user starts typing, we are going to add an event handler to the username field. So here, remember when we gave it an ID, so you can pick the ID we gave it. Then if we go to our file, we can now select the input from our DOM by doing, let's first declare a variable here to contain it. So username field, this is going to be document. We're going to use query selector. So this takes in, you can select elements by IDs, by names, by classes. So we're going to select it by the ID. Okay. So once we have that, we need to add an event listener to it. So you can do username field, add event listener. So the event listener we are going to want to look out for is going to be the key app. So key app. So the key app is fired every time a user types something. So once a user types in something, we want to run a function. So we are going to run an anonymous function here. So here let's put a console log. Let's say test. Oh, interesting. Okay, let's say 777. We need to remove one of these. Need a comma here. Okay, so let's test out if our event listener is registered. We need to close out our function. So in here, we also need to close that one. So now if we come back and do this, we start typing, you can see that we get 777. So what we're going to need to do first is now pick out what the user is typing. So to pick out what the user is typing, we are going to do, so this is going to return an event. So the event can contain very many things. So what we want to do now is declare a value. So user name var. This is going to be equal to e.target.value. Okay, so once you have that, so this should equal to what the user types in. So if I can log it down, so log, let me pull this one up. So if we log it and come back, reload, let's say username. So you can see here, every time we type something, it's logged down, which is what we want, which is good. Okay, so what is next now? We are going to need to make something called an API call to our server. Okay, so to make an API call, JavaScript has a built-in API called fetch. People call it the fetch API. What it does is it allows you to do the things we did like in Postman, just in JavaScript. So here we are going to do like fetch. And now here we need to give it the configuration of what we need it to do. So first thing, we are going to need to give it a URL that it's going to make a request to. So to give it a URL, we already know our URL. So if we come in Postman, our URL is going to be /authentication/validate username. So it's going to be a relative URL because we are already in the application, because this page here, like this JavaScript, is running on the same server. So it's going to just make an API call to the route. Okay. So since it's going to be a post request, we are going to need to specify the things we need to send and the way we are going to send them. So in here, we need to create the body. So the body is what we are sending. If you remember in Python, we said, oh, we want to pick request.body. So now we need to register our body, and our body is going to contain a key and value. So which is now going to be username that is going to equal to the username that the user makes, that the user has entered. The method is going to be specified in the method key. So I'm going to define it as post. Okay. So this is going to make a post request to the server with these details, but I would want to make them the API call when the username at least is not empty. So here I'm going to check. So if username is not equal to nothing, or I can check the length to length greater than 0. So now we can make an API call in here. So the API call, the fetch returns a promise. So you need to do .then. So when you do .then, it's going to return another promise. So here we return like what it sends. Then we need to map it to JSON. So res.json. Okay, so once we map it, now we need to to return the data. So here another .10 will return for us the data. Now we can do data. Now we can do like a console log here. So here the console log we are going to do will be for the data to see what the server is sending us back. Okay, so just test it out and see how it's going. So right here, I'm going to reload the page and I'm going to start typing test. Okay, so we have an error. So we see unquote error in promise, expect unexpected token. Okay, so to investigate what this one is, it's because we are sending this. This should be a string. Oh no, not really. Okay, so looking at our Python, it is saying decode error expected line 1. Okay, so looking at our error here, we are not sending like the correct format, and that's because with fetch you have to manually stringify like all your request data. So here we need to do JSON.stringify, and then we can give it our JavaScript object. So basically this is going to turn a JavaScript object into correct JSON that you can send over a network. Okay, so once we save this and restart the server. Okay, so once we restart our server and come back to our application, if we can reload it and then we start typing user, you can see that now we get a response from the server, and now you can see that it's saying that user name varied true. So let's imagine the user tries to submit something that's not alphanumeric. So if I add some squiggly here, you can see that we get username should not contain alphanumeric. So how do we display the error from here to here to the user? So the way we do that is still we are going to go to our JS file. So in here in the HTML template, first of all we are going to highlight this field as like show that it has an error. And the way we do that is by looking at it, which is the username field, and adding a class. So here we can say if data. So if data, then we are going to check for username error. So we want to check if the username error is there. So if data.username error, then we want to add like a class that turns this to red. So the way we do that is we are going to get the field, which is here username field. Then we are going to say class list dot add, and we are going to add a class called. So we are going to add a class called is invalid, like that. So this is the bootstrap class that turns red. So if you can see, if we reload and type test, and then we add like a dot, you can see that now it's red. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, so that's well and good, but we also need to display the message. So to display the message, I'm going to come like on the outside the input. Then I'm going to put another div. So div, then it's going to have a class of invalid feedback. So this will give it some like good style, so it can look better. So invalid feedback here, I'm going to have like a p that will say. So this is what we are going to replace with the error. Okay. So once we have invalid feedback, I want it to display none by default. So we can add an inline style. So display none. Okay, like that. So coming back to here, now we can say we need to grab it, of course. So const feedback, let's say feedback field equals, you guessed it, document query selector. So this is going to be invalid feedback. Okay, so this is going to be a class, so I'm going to put a dot, and then here we can say invalid feedback. Feedback is feedback field. Okay, this should be invalid feedback area. Okay, so feedback area, we want to look at the inner HTML and we want to append. So plus equals, actually we can just do equals now we need to use this because we need to get the error from here and display it in the template. We are going to use these template literals. So now we are going to put p. Then we need to now bring in the error. So the error is going to be in data dot username field. This is what we saw down here. So it's username error. Okay, that's good. Username error, actually, that's right. So if we reload here and then type in A, you can see everything is fine. C, but when I type that, you can see, yeah, we have an error, cannot set property of null. Okay, so this class, we need to make sure it's the same here. So I'm going to add it. Okay, so if we reload, then type in ABC, whatever, we still are unable to get it. Let's see. Okay, so by default we said it should display to none. So we need to display it to block when there is an error. So we also need to do feedback area dot style dot display. We need to do style display equals block. So this will show it. Okay, so if I reload again and then type in tan tan tan, then exclamation, you can see that the error is now being shown. Okay, so how do we remove the error when a user now is typing something else? So that means we need to keep track of when a user is typing. So the way we can do that is before we make an API call, so here, before we make an API call, like here, we need to define, we need to like set these now to hide them away. So the way we can do that is I'm going to copy them here and down up here, at first we are going to remove this class. So remove is invalid. Then we are going to set it to none. Okay, so that's fine. So now let's look at how it's behaving. So type test. Okay, then put an error, and then it's not showing because it is still none. Okay, let's see. So remove invalid. Let me see. Data is not defined. Okay, sorry. So here there is an error here. So this should not be here at all. We need to remove it. So reload. Type 1, 2, 3. Put an error. Then you can see that the error comes back. But when a user stops, you can see that now we remove the error. But when they type again and maybe get an error again, yeah, so we show the error. Whenever they change, we remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at this. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel just so you can keep in the loop. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.